Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Vacca with another episode of A Better Divorce podcast. And today I'm so happy to welcome Gabrielle Hartley to the show today. She is an attorney and an online mediator. Her practice is 100% online, and she is the author of two books. One is the most recent, it's called Better Apart, The Radically Positive Way to Separate. And her other book previously was The Secret to Getting Along and Why It's Easier Than You Think. Not only that, she has a very popular TED Talk called that talks about her yes method for conflict disputes. So, Gabrielle, it's so great to have you here. Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea. I'm excited to have the chance to finally talk to you.
I know we've been social media friends, I guess, for a few years now.
Long time. Yeah, I feel like I know you.
Yeah. So, so before you were a mediator, you were a court clerk to a very well-known and well-respected New York City Supreme Court judge, New York State Supreme Court judge, but based here, I think, in Brooklyn. And he handled all divorce cases, and you were his clerk. So after that, what made you move from being in the heart of the litigation process away from that into mediation? Can you just tell us a little bit about how that happened?
So I worked for Judge Sunshine in Staten Island and in Brooklyn. And during that time, I had the pleasure of helping bring hundreds and hundreds of high conflict trial ready cases to resolution. And when I left working for the judge and went into private practice, I really wanted to keep doing the kind of work that I was doing there, which was helping clients bring things to a close. But, society really pushes us a lot toward litigation, both as a young practitioner. It pushed me in that direction. I think it pushes a lot of people. Any of your listeners, you might think like, oh, I'm not going to get a good deal if I mediate. I need to go to court. The judge is going to tell me what to do, etc. But what I know, and you of course also know, Andrea, is that the judge is just a person. And the judge that I worked for, he used to always say, you don't want this stranger in black robes deciding your life, right? And it's really true. The judge is just a person who's going to make the best decisions applying the law. But remember, the laws have a really wide array of potential outcomes. You can't know what a judge is going to do. And so when I wrote Better Apart, I was just really excited about the idea of providing people a way to step out of their heads for a minute and engage with exercises around patience, peace, respect, clarity, and forgiveness, which would all help to elevate their own sense of self while they're going through this really draining divorce. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, I mean, and the role of the court clerk, for those who don't know, is to help have the judge have less trials, right?
Right. At the time, it would be like, and I was like, 30 years old when I was doing it. So I had the much like older lawyers, really experienced attorneys, and the clients, and everybody's, by the time they coming to see me, it was very heated, right? Like they were not your typical mediation cases. They were high conflict. They were in court because they had some dispute that they thought was worth spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on. And I was kind of like the last stop before trial.
Right.
So,
right. So yeah,
I loved it. Surprisingly, I was like, this is really fun.
Well, obviously, I mean, your conflict resolution is such a core part of who you are and what you do now. But you've also, you talked about your weird family based on how your parents divorced.
Yeah.
So just what made them, as a child, what made them so weird, and as an adult, looking back, what made them so unusual? What was it? That
Yeah, so they really had the vision of being a transformed family. I was raised with the notion that our home wasn't broken. We had two different homes, um, but we were still like, it was very clear to me when I was 9 years old. My parents sat me down and they were like, "We're your parents. We're in charge. You're not going to run this show like a lot of other kids do." And they met with the mediator. They had lawyers. I mean, I remember this, and this was like early 1980s, right? And they um, decided together with my input that I was going to change houses between my two parents and
mm,
alternate weekends. And we had a real 50-50 split with, like, I guess my mother had a tiny bit more. Now that I look at it from a legal point of view, I understand like how the negotiation must have happened, because all Sunday nights I slept at my mom's house. So
mm,
probably she just needed that one little extra and my dad gave it to her. But it's like Catholic holidays with dad, Jewish holidays with mom, like summer schedule, the whole thing. And when I went to court and I worked for the judge, I kind of, it feels like so naive of me to have been so surprised at how the process in the 20 years or so since I grew up really didn't change. And now that it's been another 20 years, it still hasn't changed. The
mm.
process is moving a bit more in the direction toward where I am and where you are, which is to mediate, help people as you do collaborate, to work toward a resolution that is really supportive of the family and supportive of having a positive legacy for your family. But the go-to is still file and fight and escalate and make things worse. And that is not going to serve anybody.
Yeah, escalate, make things worse, and then shove them back together and try to find a solution when you're on the eve of trial, right? So it's like it, it's so unfortunate how traditional attorneys just the couple could come in like this close, and then the traditional negotiation process pushes them apart, builds more mistrust, and then no one wants to litigate, no one wants to go to trial. So then it's like, okay, now come to an agreement when you
Right.
when you
And I think the lawyers, we learn this concept in law school of zealous advocacy, but there's no carve out, which I actually had prepared a whole curriculum about, like zealous advocacy in the context of family law. Right. So you have to remember your client isn't just like someone who was in a car accident. Your client is going long after the ink is dry on the divorce. They still have to interact with this other person. Or even if they don't have to interact with them, if there are no children or the children are grown, they still have like their mind's eye of what their life was. And you're giving them, if you go to litigation, and I'm not an enemy of litigation. I do think sometimes it's necessary, but most of the time it's not. And if you go there, it's really hard to unremember all those things that were said about you or written about you. And I can tell you from litigating for many years, you have to say pretty awful things about the other side in order to prevail in court. And, it just becomes ugly. It doesn't really help anybody.
No, there's so many, all those things you have to say, and you have to dredge up in your own mind about all the terrible things that they did, all the ways they weren't a great parent or weren't a great partner or weren't a great daughter or son-in-law to your family. I mean,
Right.
you're encouraged to think about these things. You're encouraged to write every little thing down to prepare your case. And like you said, you can't forget all of that. And now you have to go co-parent. And now
Right,
you
and
have
now
to
you rehearsed it in your mind all the times you said it, you've written it. Now you've like cemented it, and now you've anchored in your own mind the the story, right? And so like in my divorce online mediation practice and through my work through Better Apart, like my goal is to help people look at their life in a different way with more self-respect, right? Because really, even if the person you're divorcing is a bad person in your mind, even if you're thinking of them as like maybe not a full-on narcissist, but like really selfish, practically a narcissist, still getting divorced in a positive way is going to serve you. And
yes.
that's the thing that I just want every single one of your listeners and anyone else who's heard me on any other podcast or TV show to know, like, it's just you can do this in a way that actually sets you in a position that you're ready to have a better life. Because if your life is going to be bad, you might as well just stay divorced, stay married in a bad marriage, right?
Right. Right. That's why we call it a Better Divorce podcast. And,
Right.
and I love your book, Better Apart, and it's the radically positive way to separate. I love
Right.
that title because so many people automatically think of all the negatives that go along with the marriage ending.
Right.
And, you are focusing on what can you do? What can be positive? What can come out of this? And a lot of it starts with you. It all
You
starts
and, your,
with you.
and your choices. You might have friends and relatives who you love, who you've been friends with for 25 years, and they're all very negative about your soon-to-be ex. Like, you might have to take a pause with some of those relationships for a little while, because it's not going to actually in the long term help you to just put the other person down for a little while you're in the angry stage. Yes, but then there comes a time where you need to start moving on because it's going to help you to actually enjoy your life.
Yeah. And create the future that you want for yourself, right? Not be tied back to, again, all that negativity.
Right.
So you decided to write this book, and who were you ideally, you were hoping, I guess, to help people have a better divorce like your parents had, to
Yeah.
transform their
I mean,
relationship?
yeah, like I had a couple of goals. It was a real passion project of mine. I I wanted people I wanted to give people permission that they didn't have to feel bitter, they didn't have to be a doormat in order to have a positive divorce. It doesn't mean you have to just give it all away, right? You can
Right.
still have a strong advocate. Even if you go to a mediation, you can still have an advocate there. You can still get the best outcome for your family. I also thought, which is completely ridiculous, like, okay, well, some people go to litigation, but they can still read this book because even if you're in litigation, you still want to feel good, right? Because every human being in my mind wants to feel good and be happy. And so, a lot of mediators actually purchase boxes of these books and give them out to their lawyer, their clients as just like a little takeaway after their first meeting, which is great. But you just asked like why I wrote it. I was kind of thinking it didn't occur to me that I'd be selling to my choir, right? Like it makes sense that like you'd get a box of 100 books and give them to your clients. But in my mind, it was the litigators who were going to do that, which makes no sense because that's not what their goal is, and they're not going to spend the money to like uplift their clients, right? And
No.
no shade, but it is what it is on that regard, you know.
Right. But those who happen to find the book, what will they know? Like, why are the mediators handing it out? And why might somebody whose attorney or mediator doesn't give it to them want to pick this up? Who are you
Well,
speaking
I
to here?
the mediators I'll say, first of all, the attorneys, it's not that the attorneys don't want to read the book. Their clients to read the book. It's just not on brand for them. So it's not, they they don't that's not really what they're trying to do, is to keep everybody calm and look at things differently. It's a whole different personality. It's a whole different, way of being.
Right. Exactly.
The mediators and the collaborative lawyers, people who go into that, tend to just have a different worldview and maybe tend to be a little bit more human oriented and really want their clients to keep calm. I just want to like editorialize a little bit on all this like lawyer bashing. I do think that there's a set of lawyers who, maybe because of where they come from, maybe because of their life experience, they saw somebody get taken advantage of. And so they really fight very hard for people who they see as being taken advantage of. And anyway, I just want to say that if you're, listening to this and you're with a lawyer, like, it is so good to have a strong lawyer for so many reasons. It's just probably not for 85% of you.
Right. What kind of lawyer do you need? No, this isn't about lawyer bashing. It's about finding the right lawyer for you. It's like
Yeah.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right?
Yes.
Like, what's the right process for you? And then what's the right attorney to help you in that process that's right for you? So
That's right.
I always suggest people find their process and then find the right lawyer, not the other way around, because
Right.
certain lawyers will push you into a process because it works best for them. And
Right.
that's how their lens. You
That's right.
have to do your own exploration.
And it may be that you have to feel around, like talk to some lawyers. I get a lot of calls from people who've read Better Apart or who've heard or seen me on something and they really want to work with me. And then they start talking, and I'm like, you can't, like, no, because like there's like financial abuse, there's all this stuff, and then I have to send them to a lawyer. And so I sort of vet clients that way. And I doubt many, see, I'm doing the bashing again. I was going to say, I doubt that many litigators are saying, oh, you really should go to mediation, unless it's a mediation lawyer, right? Like there are lawyers like, in who are litigators who also mediate. But
Well, I will say I do get referrals from attorneys who can litigate,
right,
and they refer them to me because the client came in talking about mediation or
yes,
collaboration.
yeah,
And so if
it's really good to know if you're getting divorced. I mean, I actually have a section. Better Apart is a real like go-to toolbox kit. Like it talks about like all these emotional things, but it also talks about like questions to ask your lawyer in the first meeting. What are the different ways to get divorced? What way to get divorced is best for me? And then it sort of breaks down the entire process in like
yeah,
a lot of detail.
right. And there's this one section, I think it's a whole chapter about patience. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really important, because most divorces are not a couple coming to this decision at the exact same moment, right? Usually one person has been thinking about it for a while and the other person's very surprised,
Yep.
or someone does something stupid once again, and it's like the last straw, so it's rarely that you're on the same page at the same time. So I find that a lot of the clients who've been thinking about it for a while want it done yesterday. If
Yeah.
not if not tomorrow, or if not
Right.
tomorrow, yesterday, I don't it's very, very hard for them to accept that their spouse is going to, it's gonna take some time for them to come up to speed and accept this. And also, they need to be patient with themselves. So can you talk a little bit about, patience, and why you wrote a whole chapter on that? Why
So
that's part of your better process?
a divorce is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And patience, especially in this world of instant gratification and immediacy, the more we have our phones connected, right? The more we can look things up right in the moment. We're just used to getting what we want quickly. And when it comes to divorce, there is really no way to rush the wheels of justice, especially if you're going to court. Like, even, first of all, to Andrea's point, what you just said about people being in two different places, divorce is like a fine wine. It needs time to age, and one person needs to catch up a little bit to the other person oftentimes. But even if you're both at the same point, unless you're mediating or unless you're doing collaborative, you have to be patient with the court process. You have to be patient with the fact that the other side, like, you might think, why should he get visitation? Like, why should they? He's doing this. You can't just go into court and say, he's never been there or she's never been there and demand visitation. You have to go through a whole process from the very beginning, discovery, where you get documents, there's interviews with people. It's not exciting like a courtroom television program either. It is very slow. The wheels of justice are like triangles. They're like clunk, clunk, clunk. They go really slowly. And then you have to be patient with the fact that people may not see things the way you do. You have to be patient with your ex. You might have to be patient with your parents, with your friends. Like, you might want to have a peaceful divorce and your friends think you should fight. You might have to be patient with them so you don't lose long-term relationships. You have to be patient with yourself. Like, why don't you feel better already? You might have to be patient with your kids. Like, why don't you like this new apartment? I just helped, I just took you to IKEA and you got all this new furniture. Why are you still crying? You know, I mean, there's so many people that you have to be patient with. And there are so many situations that you have to be patient with. So it's really just so important. And for me, I am like naturally such an impatient person, um, that it was very obvious to me that that's a growth spot, right? For many people. Like, even getting Better Apart published, I had to get an agent. I had to sell it. I had to like it and then I wrote it. Like, it came out in 2019, but the process started in 2015. And then The Secret to Getting Along started in 2020, 2021, and it came out in May of 2023. Even though it is kind of the prequel, it came after. But patience is just part of life, and you need patience more than ever when you are in a polarized situation.
Right. So any tips for somebody who's dealing with any of those impatient feelings? Um,
Of
I don't
course.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
what can you throw some out that,
yeah, sure.
the more common ones you hear yourself
Yeah,
share?
so a step back is the best way forward. That is like my biggest, if you remember only one thing that I say today, a step back is the best way forward. And when you're feeling impatient, you want to remove yourself from the situation, from the thought loop, from the negative um, narrative pattern that you're finding yourself in. And you're going to want to either distract yourself. I don't like that word because I don't mean by like with drugs or alcohol or something bad, but like watch a show, talk to a friend, go for a walk. That's one thing. Just take space.
Mhm.
Give yourself an artificial time. Like, I'm not going to think about this until that date. And when it's not that date yet, I'm not allowed to think about that yet. Like, you have to develop an internal discipline around that.
Okay.
Um, Another thing that you can do is to do some positive journaling. I'm a really big fan of that. When you're feeling impatient, do the dump. If you like to write, write down everything that you're feeling bad about. And then on the next page, rather than like, you hear people talking about like gratitude journals, you could have a patience journal where you're just visualizing where you want to go, how you want things to be. Just the art of writing it down. You're doing kind of like reflective listening with yourself. You're mirroring yourself and you're soothing yourself. So it's like all self-soothing activities will help you to develop greater patience.
Right, right. And some deep breaths.
Yeah, of course. Like deep breaths. Yeah, we can talk about that. I feel like I talk about breaths so much. So since you mentioned it, if any of your listeners don't know about like what that really means with deep breathing, so for thousands of years, and probably even more that we know about, humans have been doing breathing to calm their central nervous system. And just a really simple exercise is to breathe in through your nose for a count of 5, hold it at the top for a count of 5, and breathe out through pursed lips for a count of 5, and just repeat it 5 times. It takes like a minute and a half, and do it with your eyes closed, seated in a chair. When you open your eyes and take that last breath, again, it's in, hold, out, hold. In through your nose, hold at the top, out through your nose, hold at the bottom. If the holding at the bottom freaks you out, which it might freak you out if you try it, just do in, hold, in, hold, out, hold. I mean, I'm sorry, in, hold, out, in, hold, out. Like,
Right.
don't do the bottom hold if that is making you feel anxious or short of breath. Do it 5 times, 5 seconds on each time, and
Mhm.
you will find when you open your eyes, you just feel a little bit calmer and you're creating space for better possibilities to present themselves.
Yes, you can use that when you're feeling impatient, when you're feeling stressed, anxious. Oh, it's I think it's called box breathing because it's the equal
So
numbers.
box
Right.
breathing is when you do the in, hold, out, hold. And if you don't do the bottom hold, it's just called modified box breathing. Because
Modified box breathing.
it's
Okay.
more like just in, out. Right.
Yeah, it helps regardless of whether you do box or modified. It will
Right,
help.
right, it will. And another thing is, when you're feeling impatient, we do this whole snowballing thing where, and so what could be really helpful is to create what I call safe haven containers where you just break out, again, you can do it in a journal, all the things that are bothering you, and you can see that maybe it's the cumulative, um, effect that's actually bringing you down. It's not like one thing is so bad. It's just like, Poppy, I takes all as I cans and I can't takes no more. Like he just,
Yeah.
and then, I don't know. I think he's then his muscles pop out from his
Yeah.
spinach. I don't know. I think that was like one big long spinach ad, right? Popeye.
Yeah, basically.
Anyway, um, if you can parse out all the little things, you'll see most of the time of course, there are terrible things, but most of the time, it's all little things. And then you can approach each little thing one by one, but you can't do that when you're in that panic cycle. So, like, for instance, I've had people come in who have like a suicidal kid, a kid who's dealing with some other, mental health thing, a dying parent, and an annoying spouse. So they come to me to get divorced. Well, that's because the spouse, well, I know what to do about that. I could just get rid of them, but they still have all those other things. So, like, query, maybe you take a break on getting rid of the spouse and let some of these other things sort out and get stabilized. And then take another look, right? Like maybe that's not the answer. So,
Yeah, or maybe it's, you have to move forward with the divorce. It might not be your choice, but you find somebody to help you with your parent, like not take everything on, right?
right,
And not,
right. Make sure your kid has the support that they need. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself while your kid. I mean, this is, I said that really quickly and I didn't mean to sound
oh no.
or whatever, like, but this is in this post-COVID world, there are so many parents who have kids with so many different issues that cause a lot of stress for the parent. And then they also have their own aging parents. So getting help, right, to your point, if you do need to get divorced, I know I'm a divorce lawyer who's always like, are you sure you need to get divorced? I always tell people I'm not a should I say or should I go expert. I help you once you've decided you want to go. But taking care of yourself first is just absolutely essential. And that's really what Better Apart and The Secret to Getting Along are all about.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. It really does come down to, and that's the only thing you can control is yourself
That's
and
right.
your feelings and your emotions and your behaviors and your actions. That's all we have. That's all we can control. We can't control the other people in our lives and what they're doing. We can only, control how we react to what
Right.
they do, right?
Right. It's all
So
about responding instead of reacting. And often it's very, very hard to do that. But
it
even
is,
building the awareness, that's like one step.
right.
You know,
And
you could
that's why your books are so helpful to help people see themselves, perhaps get some tips, get some help, and try something different. Try a
right,
different
right,
tip
it's just a little
tool.
different. Like, I have a lot of exercises, every chapter in both books, I've a lot of really easy exercises that you can just do. It's not like you don't have to, like, buy a lot of stuff, you don't have to become a whole different person, like, you do it your way. Here's some things like mantra. The word mantra makes people say, "Ugh." Like, affirmation, like, I used to say to myself all the time, "I am radically calm," because I wasn't calm. I had 3 little kids, now they're older, it's a little calmer, but I'd go to yoga, and the whole time for an hour and a half, I'd be breathing in and out, "I'm radically calm, I'm radically calm." You can hear how quickly I talk. Obviously, I'm still a very high octane person, but by telling myself that I'm calm, I'm slowing down a scintilla,
Hmm.
and I'm just feeling that much better,
Yes.
and that is really what I would offer for all of you to do in your way, in your time. Like,
Yeah.
I give you ideas of ways to do it and what to say, but this is your life, this is your process, and I really just want to give you all the tools so that you can really take control of your own future.
Yeah. And that toolbox that you will use during your divorce, you can take with you. You don't have to leave it
Right,
behind, right? So
exactly,
bring it
exactly,
into your new life.
right, exactly.
Oh, that's good. So of all the tips that you have and all the tools, like this is my last question. What is your one better divorce tip? What would you pull out of all your tips to say that's what your one better divorce tip that you want to share?
Um, so I already shared that, taking a step back is the best way forward.
Mhm.
The other thing, which is sort of analogous to that, which I really did not like when somebody once said it to me, it's slowest is fastest. And in the book, I say, piano, piano si fa lontano, slowly, slowly we go far. That's really the best tip.
I love that.
Hard now, easy later.
Yes. In there's a garden where I live, and on the gate it's in Turtle Bay in New York, and on the gate there's a turtle, and it says "Festina lente," make haste slowly in
Exactly.
Latin,
Yeah.
and it really has become my mantra since I've
Right.
been living there because
Yeah. Love
yep,
that.
so I love that. So make haste slowly. Um, go slowly to go faster,
That's
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle. It was really good to have you here.
Thank you
And
so
how can everyone find you? What's the best way
much.
to reach out to you, find you?
GabrielleHartley.com. You can learn more about how you can work with me in all variety of ways, whether you're already in court and trying to reach a resolution, or you're not in court, or any variety of things around your kind of family law issue. And I also do speak about conflict resolution, so you can find ways to contact me and my agent there for that. So thank you so much. Again, it's GabrielleHartley.com, and my books are there and everything else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.
And thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast. We will definitely catch you on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.